Girl, you have to help me satisfy my husband. I honestly can't take it anymore. Recently, my wife couldn't handle my intensity anymore and went crying to her best friend for help, wanting to ease the tension between us. Her bestie decided to come to our house alone. She showed up in a sexy short dress that barely contained her curves. So I hear you're pretty wild, huh? Let me see what all the fuss is about. My name is Cole Griffin after 5 years of marriage. My body suddenly went through a second round of development. The growth down there was nothing short of astonishing. And with it came an insatiable appetite. I found myself wanting it 7 or 8 times a day. At first, my wife was thrilled with the change. Every night brought her to the brink of exhaustion. In the best way possible, but gradually. I kept growing and she couldn't handle me anymore. Stop, please. I can't take any more, you're going to break me. She'd beg me through tears. But I was desperate with need. The urge was unbearable. I ended up pressing her against the wall, taking what I had to have. Then came the day she finally snapped, crying. She demanded a divorce when I refused. She packed up and moved in with her best friend. Days passed, no sign of her coming home. I was going out of my mind. Every night I'd be so hard. I thought I'd explode. The ache was torture. Her best friend caught wind of what was happening. Curiosity got the better of her, claiming she wanted to help patch things up between us. She showed up at my place ready. It's to offer a different kind of relief. The night she arrived, I was pacing the living room, restless and on edge. The doorbell rang. My heart leaped finally. My wife had come home after days of pent-up frustration. I'd finally get some relief. But when I opened the door, it wasn't my wife standing there. It was Ramona Lincoln, my wife's best friend. She wore a tight black bodice dress that hugged every curve. Her breasts strained against the fabric. Full and round, impossible to ignore. The hem barely grazed her thighs, leaving her long, slender legs on full display. Sheer black stockings, giving way to a teasing glimpse of bare skin at the top. I stood there stunned. My body reacted instantly. I've been expecting my wife. So I'd answered the door in nothing but loose shorts. The tent I was pitching was unmistakably obvious. Ramona's eyes went wide. You really did grow again. That's bigger than a beer bottle. Like truth was, Ramona was a woman with unmet needs herself. She was beautiful, anyone could see that. But she'd married a rich old man. According to my wife, he'd burned through his prime too hard and too fast. Now his body had given out and he couldn't satisfy her at all. These days, she apparently spent good money on male escorts to fill the void. I motioned her inside. She settled onto the couch, crossing her legs slowly, showing off those red-bottom heels. Make damn sure I noticed. So what brings you here, Ramona? I asked, grabbing a glass of water and handing it to her. Where's Rachel? She took a sip, then fixed me with a look. You're the reason. You're like a bull on steroids. Rachel's too scared to come home. I'm here to talk some sense into you. You can't keep going at her like that. She's delicate, for God's sake. No woman could handle a brute like you. Going full force as she spoke. Her chest rose and fell with each word. Those two magnificent breasts moved hypnotically beneath the thin fabric bigger than my wife's. And I couldn't tear my eyes away. My pulse hammered in my ears. God, I wanted to touch them. I sighed, settling into the chair across from her. It's not that I'm trying to be rough. It's this second development. I can't control it. The urge hits me like a freight train. If I don't, at least once a day, the ache is unbearable. Ramona's eyes sparkled with curiosity. She leaned forward. Men can have second growth spurts. You're bigger now than before. Can I see? She looked at me earnestly, like it was the most natural request in the world. My heart skipped. Was she serious? You don't just show something like that to your wife's best friend. I don't think that's appropriate. I stammered, even as my mind raced with possibilities. Ramona waved off my hesitation like it was nothing. What's the big deal? This is practically a miracle. I just want to witness it for myself. She insisted and insisted. Finally, I stopped pretending. Right there in front of her. I slowly pulled down my shorts. I'd never exposed myself to another woman before. The thrill of it was electric. Her hot gaze locked onto me. And that strange illicit excitement only grew. Ramona had clearly spent time with plenty of male escorts. Because she didn't blush, didn't flinch either. If anything, hunger flickered in her eyes. She gulped even bigger than any escort I've ever hired. Is it real? Can I touch it? I never expected her to actually ask. My heart pounded. I nodded. Ramona reached out with her soft, delicate hand and wrapped her fingers around me. An explosion of pleasure shot through my body. Electric tingling. This wasn't just touching. She was stroking me deliberately. After days of pent-up frustration, I was already on edge. The way she moved her hand up and down only made it worse. The fire inside me blazed hotter. Consuming everything. My organs felt like they were burning up. I couldn't stop myself from trembling. Only then did she pull back. Knowing smile playing on her lips. Now I get it, she purred. You're this thick, no wonder Rachel can't handle you. I fumbled with my shorts, desperate to cover up before I lost all control and pounced on her. Right there, not my fault. I mumbled defensively, it's not like I can just not. The pressure builds up, it hurts. You know? Ah. Ramona stood up. Ah. Then, to my shock, she settled onto my lap, her round, firm ass pressed right against my straining erection. The contact was maddening. I came here to talk sense into you. Can't you just take it easier on her? If she divorces you, I won't get to see you anymore. She shifted her weight, grinding against me slightly. The friction sent fresh waves of heat crashing through my veins. What was her game? First she touched me. Now she's sitting on my lap like this. Was she actually offering herself to me? It's not about me being too rough. The second I'm inside her, she starts crying about the pain. Ramona let out a little laugh at that. Well, that does complicate things. Maybe you should just stop having sex with her altogether. Focus on being a good husband instead. I couldn't help myself. I reached out and wrapped my arms around her waist. Soft, slender. Incredible to touch, not possible. I'd literally explode. She was being so forward. Was she trying to replace my wife? I took a deep breath and gathered my courage. Since you're here, why don't you help me out? Ramona slapped my chest playfully. Feigning outrage, don't be ridiculous. I'm your wife's best friend. You want me to cheat on her with you? My heart sank, so this wasn't heading where I'd hoped. Then she added almost casually. Sex isn't the only option. You know, there are other ways. Hands, she demonstrated as she spoke. Her lips forming a perfect O that made my imagination run wild. I shook my head firmly, no way. Once in a while, maybe. But every day that'll get old fast. Hearing that, Ramona sighed and slid off my lap. Returning to the couch, then what's the solution? It's not like you can divorce her and find someone else. Rachel's my best friend. I don't want to see her marriage fall apart. And I hate watching her suffer like this. I studied her as she spoke. By her words, her body told a different story. Every curve screamed unfulfilled desire. A woman this beautiful married to some rich old geezer who couldn't get it up if his life depended on it. The waste of it, she must be starving for real attention. Screw it, I moved closer, settling beside her on the couch. My hand found its way under her skirt. When my fingers grazed her inner thigh, she didn't flint, didn't pull away. If anything, she leaned into the touch. Well, Cole didn't know you had it in you to be so bold. I grinned, pressing further. Finding her heat, she batted my hand away. But there was no real force behind it. Stop that, I'm not your wife. You know, liar. I'd already felt the dampness through her panties. My middle finger traced along the seam, teasing. Let's see how long that act lasts. You can't touch me there, her cheeks flushed. Her voice went breathy and thick. Exactly as I'd guessed, denied for too long. Well, tonight we'd both get what we needed. You show up at my place alone. Dressed like this late. What did you think would happen? You touched me first, now I'm making time to follow through. I murmured the words against her ear. She was barely holding on now. Her legs parted slightly, giving me more room. We're both married. It's wrong, she tried to squeeze her thighs shut. But I forced them back open with my hand. Married, you still spend your nights with male escorts? Drop the act, none of those pretty boys can give you what I can. I lifted her onto my shoulder in one smooth motion. And carried her to the bedroom. She squirmed against me, her perfect ass in the air. Legs kicking uselessly put me down. Have you lost your mind? I tossed her onto the bed. Grabbed her ankles, slipped off her heels. Her feet were small and delicate. Warm in my hand, perfect. I lifted one to my face, inhaling deeply. Her scent filled my lungs, went straight to my head. My blood roared in my ears. Ramona, God. You smell incredible. That you've never had anything like what I'm packing. Let me show you what you've been missing. She lay there, eyes squeezed shut. Still trying to look resistant. I'm your wife's best friend. We really shouldn't, but her body betrayed her. Her legs had fallen open, revealing the damp spot spreading across her white panties. I tore them aside, the sight that greeted me was too much to resist. I lifted her legs on. Chapter 1, The Morning After the Fire. The morning sun cut through the blinds of the master bedroom like a jagged blade, throwing harsh, golden lines across the disarray of the room. I woke up with my heart hammering against my ribs, the residual adrenaline of the night still buzzing in my veins. The insatiable ache that had tortured me for weeks was finally gone, replaced by a hollow, heavy numbness beside me. The sheets shifted. Ramona sat up, her long dark hair cascading over her bare shoulders. There was no regret in her eyes, only a cold, calculating satisfaction. She looked at me, then looked down at the unmistakable physical reality of my condition, which even in repose was vastly different from any ordinary man. Well, Ramona murmured, her voice smooth and devoid of the breathy panic from the night before. Rachel certainly wasn't lying. You really are a monster, Cole. Ramona, I started, reaching a hand out, but she swung her legs out of bed, completely unbothered by her nudity. She picked up her ruined black bodice dress from the floor with a disdainful flick of her wrist. Don't, she said, stopping me with a single glance. Let's not pretend this was a grand romance. We both got exactly what we wanted. You got relief, and I got confirmation. A chill ran down my spine, instantly freezing the lingering warmth in my body. What do you mean, confirmation? Ramona turned around, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her lips. She walked over to her designer handbag sitting on the vanity, reached inside, and pulled out her smartphone. The screen was dark, but as she tapped it, I saw the indicator light of a voice recording application blinking steadily. Do you know what a high-asset divorce looks like, Cole? Ramona asked softly, leaning against the dresser. Rachel loves you, at least, she did, but she's terrified of you now. When she came to my house crying, showing me the bruises on her wrists from where you pinned her to the wall, I realized you weren't just a husband with a high sex drive, you're a liability. My blood ran cold. You set me up. I gave you an option, Ramona countered, her eyes narrowing. I told you sex wasn't the only way. I gave you a chance to back down, but you carried me in here anyway. This recording, combined with Rachel's medical reports of internal tearing? You won't just lose the house and the divorce, Cole, you'll lose your freedom. Chapter 2, The Price of a Miracle. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands gripping my knees so hard my knuckles turned white. The rage was building, but beneath it was a terrifying realization. She had me cornered. What do you want, Ramona? I rasped. You didn't come here just to play savior to Rachel. You mentioned your husband, you mentioned escorts. You don't care about Rachel's marriage. Ramona's smile faltered, replaced by a grim, stark reality. She stepped into her skirt, zipping it up with a sharp snap. My husband's estate is worth $80 million, she said, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper, but his will stipulates that if he dies without a biological heir, 70% of the trust reverts to his children from his first marriage. The old bastard has been sterile for a decade. The escorts I hire? They're clean, they're athletic, but none of them have been able to get the job done. My biological clock is ticking, Cole. I stared at her, the pieces of the puzzle falling into a deeply twisted place. You don't want to ruin me, you want a child with my genetics. A child born with the kind of genetic anomaly you're displaying? A second development cycle that defies medical science? Ramona walked back to the bed, bending down until her face was inches from mine. Imagine what that kind of vitality could do if you cooperate. If you give me what I need over the next 2 months to ensure a pregnancy, the recording vanishes. I will convince Rachel to settle the divorce quietly, leaving you the house and your business if you refuse. She tapped the phone screen. I press send, and Rachel's attorney receives this before noon. Before I could answer, a sudden, agonizing cramp seized my lower abdomen. It wasn't the sexual frustration from before, it was a sharp, burning heat that radiated from the base of my spine down into my thighs. I gasped, doubling over on the bed, clutching my stomach. Ramona stepped back, frowning. What's wrong with you? I don't know, I managed to squeeze out, sweat instantly breaking out across my forehead. The second development wasn't just staying stable, it felt like it was shifting again, the tissue throbbing with a violent, unnatural pressure. It burns. Chapter 3, The Clinical Truth. 3 hours later, I wasn't in a divorce attorney's office. I was sitting in a private, high-end clinic on the outskirts of the city, wearing a sterile hospital gown. Ramona was standing in the corner, her arms crossed, watching me like an investor checking on a piece of faulty machinery. Dr. Vance, an endocrinologist who specialized in rare genetic mutations, walked into the room holding a digital clipboard. His face was entirely devoid of color. Mr. Griffin, Dr. Vance began, adjusting his glasses. We ran your blood panels, your testosterone levels, and performed an ultrasound of the pelvic region. What you are experiencing is not a second puberty. It is an extremely aggressive, hormone-secreting tumor embedded deep within the pituitary gland, combined with a rare localized hypervascularization. The room went dead silent. A tumor? I repeated, my voice hollow. Yes, it's driving your endocrine system into absolute overdrive. It's causing massive cellular proliferation in specific target tissues, hence the unprecedented physical growth and the near-constant state of hyperarousal. Your body is essentially running a marathon at full sprint, 24 hours a day. Ramona stepped forward, her professional facade cracking. Is it curable? Can he still function? Dr. Vance shot her a cold look. Function? Madam, if we do not operate within the next 48 hours to embolize the blood vessels and remove the mass, the sheer blood pressure entering his lower extremities will cause a massive internal hemorrhage. His organs are already showing signs of micro-tearing from the systemic strain. The pain he felt this morning was his cardiovascular system reaching its absolute limit. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking all this time. I thought I had become some kind of alpha male, a brute who could dominate any room. In reality, I was just a dying man with a ticking bomb between his legs. And the growth? I asked quietly. The changes? Once the tumor is removed, your hormone levels will crash, Dr. Vance explained gently. The tissue will return to its original, baseline size. Over the course of a few weeks the intense urges will vanish entirely. You will return to being an ordinary man, Mr. Griffin. Chapter 4, The Tides Turn. We walked out of the clinic into the blinding afternoon heat. Ramona was silent, her phone gripped tightly in her hand. The leverage she thought she had was gone. There was no miracle genetic legacy to harvest, only a medical emergency. I guess your plan is ruined, I said, leaning against the side of my car, the dull ache in my abdomen a constant reminder of the clock ticking down. Ramona looked at me, her expression a complex mixture of anger, disappointment, and a strange, lingering trace of vulnerability. You're going to have the surgery. Of course I am. I want to live. And what about Rachel? She asked, her voice cracking slightly. She's waiting at my apartment right now. She thinks I came over here to negotiate a peaceful separation if she finds out what we did. She won't, I said, looking her dead in the eye. Because you're going to delete that recording right now and you're going to help me tell her the truth about my medical condition. Not about last night but about why I was the way I was. Ramona hesitated. For a woman who spent her life buying whatever she wanted, whether it was escorts or status, the realization that she couldn't control life and death was a bitter pill to swallow. Slowly, her thumb slid across the screen. File deleted. I'll bring her to the hospital tomorrow, Ramona said quietly, turning toward her own car. But after the surgery, Cole, you make sure you stay an ordinary man, because if you ever look at me like that again, I won't need a recording to destroy you. Epilogue, The Return to Earth. 6 months later, the world was quiet. I sat on the back porch of my house, watching the amber leaves of autumn drift across the lawn. The house was empty, but it didn't feel hostile anymore. The surgery had been a success. The recovery had been a brutal, exhausting process of hormonal crashes, night sweats, and a profound, bone-deep fatigue. As my body learned to live at a normal pace again, the physical anomalies had faded, leaving me exactly as I had been for the first 5 years of my marriage: average, unremarkable, and human. The door behind me slid open. Rachel walked out, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. She wasn't crying. She didn't look at me with the wide-eyed terror that had broken my heart months ago. She sat down in the chair beside me, handing me a mug, her fingers lightly brushing against mine. We weren't fully repaired, divorce papers had been drawn up, but they were currently sitting and signed in a drawer upstairs. We were taking things one day at a time. After learning about the tumor, the anger in her had turned into a profound grief for the monster my body had forced me to become. How are you feeling today? She asked softly, taking a sip of her coffee. Normal, I replied, a genuine smile touching my lips. I reached over, wrapping my hand around hers. It was a gentle, quiet hold, no pressure, no force, just a man holding his wife's hand, completely, beautifully normal. Good, Rachel whispered, leaning her head against my shoulder. Across town, Ramona Lincoln was probably still fighting her legal battles, chasing a fortune built on old money and hollow secrets, but out here on the porch, the fire had finally burned itself out, leaving behind something fragile, clean, and ready to rebuild.